With the release of Secret Level on Amazon Prime, Warhammer 40K hit the mainstream in the biggest way yet. But, for most franchises, great success often leads to ruination and stagnation. Will this be the case for our beloved Grimdark future? Games Workshop is bent on making Warhammer 40K a household name, with the same level of brand recognition and prestige behind it as Star Wars, Star Trek, the MCU, etc. And why shouldn't they be? It may be a sci-fi tabletop wargame setting, but it has ballooned over the years into so much more. But there are folks who, like me, have been fans of the setting, who've been obsessed with the Grimdark since day one, who are not happy to see Warhammer grow. I hear this argument that becoming so mainstream is watering down the whiskey. So let's look at what they have and haven't done, and how the community has received it. And while the best indicator of future behavior is past behavior, we have to understand that Games Workshop is not the same company today that it was in 1987 when Rogue Trader came out. Nor is it even the same company it was 10 years ago. And before we get into this, I just have to point out that it is one of the main tropes of Games Workshop that they show their self-awareness of how they've become an exceptionally greedy corporation. And it actually works. As a PR campaign, instead of shying away from being the evil demons they are, they lean into it hard with the hyperbolic character Games Workshop. And I'm saying this because I feel like the state of the company in its relationship with the Warhammer community can bias opinions when it comes to the products. Okay, so we need to talk about the elephant in the Thunderhawk and get right into Secret Level Episode 5 on Prime Video, an absolutely stunning animation that continues the story of Lieutenant Titus from the Space Marine video games. And it literally has Idris Elba in it. It's actually visually stunning. An absolute masterpiece of artistry. It actually exceeded my expectations quite a bit. And it absolutely blew away any of the animation on Warhammer Plus. Hands down, this is the best Warhammer has ever looked. I feel like it's the 2000s again, and I just saw the Dawn of War trailer for the first time. We just leveled up. If you thought it was going to be on par with the Horus Heresy trailer, or the 9th or 10th edition 40K trailers, or the Kill Team trailers, you wouldn't be alone. I thought that too. But it was far, far better than even those great pieces of gorgeous animation. This was all but perfectly photorealistic. Probably the best digital animation I've ever seen. Okay, so now that I'm done blowing smoke up its ass, how good was the plot? Was it grim? Was it dark? Did Games Workshop and Amazon water down the whiskey? Or is this everything it should be? It's actually good, I have to say. The story was titled And They Shall Know No Fear, which used to be one of the main rules for Space Marines in editions of the past. So a little nod to the old school Marines players watching. But it was so good. If this was the very first thing that I ever saw that was Warhammer, I would be hooked immediately and want to dive deep into the franchise. And yes, it was extremely fitting for the Warhammer 40K setting. Nothing was out of place, contradicted the lore, or seemed wrong. And they actually depicted the Adeptus Astartes as the absolute powerhouses that they are in the lore. Like Titus just literally let a truck full of chaos cultists just smash to pieces by running into him. He was running too, full tilt, and the truck hit him and he just tore right through it, spraying flying debris in every direction as he kept going, not even breaking stride. It was brutal, and quite a spectacle. And in that moment I realized that it was probably the first time that a Space Marine was properly depicted. I mean, in the lore they can take an entire army with 5 guys, but nothing on the screen has ever fully shown that. So to see them scaling the power correctly is an unexpected treat. Thanks, Games Workshop! Now, I won't spoil the story for you, but I will say that it is very dark, gritty, violent, and portrays the Astartes in a way that I have wanted to see them portrayed since I was a kid. And I'm an old man now. This show gets Warhammer right. It totally nails the Space Marines, at least. And it takes a lot to get me to appreciate the ultramarines. It's nothing personal, just burnout, and the fact that I barely survived the Matt Ward era. It's like, I love cheeseburgers, but if nearly every meal I ate was a cheeseburger, it wouldn't be long until I seriously resented them, you know? So that's how I feel about the Ultramarines. And yes, even in the Space Marine games, especially Space Marine 2, the Ultramarines were made out to be some sort of beacon of light, total good guys fighting for what's right, etc. I mean, Captain whoever the fuck in his Phobos armor did say that if he had to, he'd burn this world, stating he'd be willing to use exterminatus if it came to that. But otherwise, everything they did seemed to be altruistic and heroic, and that just rubbed me wrong, even for Ultramarines. But in this secret level episode, that's all a non-issue. This is dark. Chaos is evil and gritty and terrifying. The Marines are weapons of war, not heroic paragons of humanity. They're the living weapons that they're meant to be. And I loved seeing that. This rubbed me the exact opposite as, say, a Nurgling plushie toy or a Sisters of Battle chibi. This was ominous and had that overarching feeling of evil and warp shenanigans dominating every moment. It reminded me that Warhammer 40K is truly, in many ways, a cosmic horror setting just as much as a fantasy space opera setting. Tzeentch's followers were just as sinister, horrific, and strange as anything I've seen from any other franchise, while somehow still giving subtle nods to some of the real OG sci-fi Warhammer 40k ripped off in the early days. Parodied. But it does seem that more and more Games Workshop is veering hard away from that old silly cartoonishness that has been with Warhammer since the beginning. They're just leaning heavily into that grimdark feel. Basically, we're seeing less and less 2nd edition 40k influence, and more 3rd edition influence taking over the current lore and aesthetic. And there's nothing wrong with that in my book. So Secret Level 5 was amazing, but was it perfect? No. But I loved every moment of it, and I cannot wait to see more. And while it was a new product, and the first look at the level of animations they're going to be bringing us, Games Workshop showed that they aren't just going to play it safe. They even depicted the Ultramarines in a very dark, terrifying way that I didn't expect. So by the time they get to doing animations about things like the Horus Heresy, the Chaos Space Marines, the Dark Mechanicum, Drukhari, etc., it should end up being some very brutal content, which I'm all for. I mean, they could ruin it at any time, sure. I'll give you that, for those who want to make that argument. But it must be pointed out that if they're going to start out on such a dark note and depict the literal poster boys of the setting in such a grimdark manner, we can be at least a little confident that it is only going to get darker, which means better from here. After all, imagine this level of animation for a Night Lord story arc. I, for one, would love to see something like that. And both Games Workshop and Amazon know that, and they know I'm not the only one. So maybe the future of the setting includes video games, collectible card games, mobile games, and other more casual ways to interact with Warhammer. But at least as far as the first mainstream release for their new high-budget animations goes, so far so good. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is the new animation something you appreciate? Are you worried that Amazon will ruin Warhammer? You wouldn't be alone if you do, and there's certainly nothing wrong with feeling that way. I must admit, I was skeptical myself, and that might be why I liked the episode so much, since anything better than absolutely terrible did actually exceed my expectations. Maybe I will have to give it a day or two to let the wow factor wear off a bit. I'll let you know if anything changes then, but for now, I'm calling this a strong 5 stars.